Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Bedlam Nation Conversation presented by Dodge. I'm Oklahoma Deputy Sports Editor Mike Haler, and joining me to talk about today's big news in Norman and Stillwater are OU football beat writer Jake Trotter and OSU football beat writer Scott Wright. One of the compelling national stories this week, which John Rohde wrote about in Thursday's edition of the Oklahoman, is the number of injuries at top programs around the country. Jake, OU's been affected. Linebacker Austin Box is hurt. He's going to miss a few weeks. How does that affect the Sooners?
I don't think it's going to affect them too much. They have Tennessee Chattanooga in the opener. That's going to be almost like an exhibition for the Sooners. So that's going to give Box an extra week to come back. I think he'll be ready to go for Cincinnati. But they also like the Mike Ballaghan, the junior college transfer out of Pennsylvania. He's going to step in at that weak side linebacker spot. So they should be all right, I think, at least in the early going. But
that's an important position for them. Ryan Reynolds, another guy in the linebacker core, has been banged up in the past. How does he look? And how do they look overall at that position?
He looks good. He's had the benefit of having the offseason to work out and to work on his speed and conditioning, which he hasn't been able to do the last two off seasons. He's been rehabbing from knee surgeries. So he looks like he's ready to go, and I think they're going to be okay at linebacker this year.
What about some of the other guys that they have? Keenan Clayton is another returner that people are probably familiar with. Where's he fit into that mix?
Keenan Clayton's playing strong side linebacker, which is essentially also the nickel back spot. He's a very athletic player. The biggest concern for him is tackling. If he tackles well, he's going to be a really productive guy for the defense because they think he can be pretty good in pass coverage.
But overall on the defense, is that the weak link as far as how strong the front line is going to be, or where does the linebacker fit in?
As far as compared to the rest of the defense? Mm-hmm. Well, I think the defensive line obviously is the strength. I think after that, we'll wait to see whether the secondary, the linebackers are the stronger of the two. But I think they have a chance to be really good at both in the secondary and the linebacker too. Looks like the pieces are coming together. The keys to the back seven are Mike Ballaghan, an outside linebacker, and Box when he comes back, and then the two corners who haven't played before, Brian Jackson and Dominique Franks.
All right, thanks, Jakes, for that. We'll be right back with the Bedlam Nation Conversation, but first a word from Dodge. And we're back with the Bedlam Nation Conversation presented by Dodge. Now we turn our attention to Oklahoma State. Scott Wright, you're writing about Andrew Lewis this week, OSU's starting center. How do the Cowboys look up front, considering they're going to have to protect Zach Robinson, the most important piece of the team?
Well, they're really looking pretty solid along the front. Russell Okung is the kind of guy that's going to get some NFL attention eventually. He's only a junior right now. If he has a really good year, could possibly look at going on early, but most likely he'll be around for another 2 years. Brady Bond, a local kid, is doing really well at the right tackle spot. Lewis has been he had been the starting center. He's playing a little bit at left guard, which is probably the biggest question mark along that front line right now. And that enabled them, with Lewis moving to guard, and enabled them to put David Washington, who was the starting center before he got hurt last year, back into that center spot, and help solidify two spots at once there. So they're really looking pretty good. They've got a lot to live up to after what they did last year with leading the number one rushing offense in the Big 12. Also were tops in fewest sacks allowed in the conference. Only give up 11 over 13 games. So the bar is set pretty high for these guys, but they're looking pretty solid so far.
Depth is always a question at Oklahoma State. Do they have guys to come in and spell those starting offensive linemen? How deep do they really go?
They're getting closer on to being too deep all the way around. Right now, I would say that they probably have three backups in all that they feel pretty comfortable with if they had to put them in there in a crucial Big 12 game. So the depth is getting closer to where they want it to be. But they needed to keep those that front five on the field as much as possible.
A lot of talk about Okung. How good is he really?
He is really good. He's a big guy. He's got a long reach. He moves really well. So like I said, I think that if he puts it together a really good junior year, there's a chance that he might be able to sneak into maybe a first round draft choice and go ahead and leave early.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott, for that. We'll be back with the Bedlam Nation Conversation, but first a word from Dodge. And we're back with the Bedlam Nation Conversation presented by Dodge. This segment is Point Counterpoint, where we debate the hot topics in college sports. Guys, again, let's look at the national picture. It looks like Georgia is going to be a consensus pick at number one. That's what everybody's saying. The first AP poll comes out on Saturday, so we'll find out more then. The question for you guys is, Georgia, will they play in the national title game? What do you say, Jake?
I say no. Schedule's too tough. They got to play Tennessee, got to play Florida, got to play the SEC West teams. It's almost too tough to come out of that with only one loss, as LSU proved last year with 2 losses. So I think that it's going to be somebody out of the Big 10, Big 12, or Pac-10 play for the national title.
What do you think, Scott?
I think that they're the best team in the country, and I think that they're gonna not only make it to the national title game. I think when they come to Boone Pickens Stadium to kick off the 2009 season, they're going to be the defending champions. I think that the schedule is tough. I don't think that they're going to go undefeated and just go unscathed through the SEC, but I think that they'll have a difficult game that they lose, and they're able to rise back up through the rankings. And you know, the BCS numbers will favor them, I think, when you get to the end of the year, and they'll be playing for the title.
They haven't missed this injury bug, though. They already got an important guy hurt in the preseason, Jake. Do you think, how big a factor is that going to be, and can they get through the season without any more of those?
Well, I believe they lost an offensive tackle, right? So
right.
I think that they've already, that's a big loss to have losing one of your starting tackles in the preseason. Here's the deal. If they have one loss, Georgia will probably play for the national championship because their strength of schedule, even though it's not factored in, humans factor that in, and the computer polls will really reward them for that. They're going to be playing for the national title. That's why I think they're going to have 2 losses. I mean, you just look at the teams in the West and the SEC East. I just don't see them going 1 loss or undefeated through that.
But Scott, you say one loss is fine to get you back in?
Yeah, I think 1 loss will do it, and I think that especially with the skill players they have back on offense in Moreno and Matthew Stafford, I think are the kind of guys that are going to be able to carry them through the difficult SEC.
All right, and that's the final word on this week's Point Counterpoint. We'll be back with our final segment of the Bedlam Nation conversation presented by Dodge after this message. And we're back with the Bedlam Nation conversation presented by Dodge, this time prediction time. Let's look at the newcomers at OU and OSU. Guys, Scott, we'll start with you. My question, what player will have the biggest impact? What newcomer will have the biggest impact on OSU this season? You
know, it's a tough question in Stillwater because they've got so many guys, especially junior college players on the defensive side of the ball where they need a lot of help, who are going to be significant contributors in their first season. You've got a guy like Donald Booker at middle linebacker, Maurice Gray at cornerback, Bo Johnson on the offensive side of the ball. The running back has looked really talented. But I'm going to go with the big defensive tackle, Swanson Miller, 6'4", 300 pounds. The guy moves really well for such a big guy. They've got the depth now on the defensive line that they're not going to have to play him 60 snaps a game. They'll be able to split some time with him and Tongatea, and that'll allow him to stay fresh. And I think that's going to enable him to have a really big impact, help the Cowboys out where they need the help the most at the defensive line.
Jake, a lot more true freshmen have a chance to play at OU. Younger guys, who do you think has the most impact as a newcomer?
I think it's going to be the redshirt freshman Ryan Broyles in the slot. Playmaker, he's going to return some punts, maybe even some kicks too, and the kid has a lot of natural ability. He has a lot of sure hands, and he has a knack for making people miss. I think he's a guy, you're looking for a guy in that offense that can make some plays. He's going to be a guy that has a chance to really do some damage this year.
So they all pleased that he finally decided to go to OU after the world's longest signing day a couple years ago?
I'm telling you, they're very glad he's there. And OSU, he's a player that they could use too because the way he is able to make plays in the slot, which is a position that OSU uses too. So he's going to be a contributor this year. I think that he has a chance to have a really nice career when it's all said and done.
All right, that does it with the latest edition of the Bedlam Nation Conversation brought to you by Dodge. To follow all the news and insight of OU and OSU sports, stay with the best coverage team in the state at newsok.com, newsok.tv, and every day in the Oklahoman.